Kia ora koutou. Anau mai hara mai rā koutou ki tēnei hui a topa nei, a tēnei ahi pōnei. Nā mihi rā kia koutou. Ko Ripeka Lascelles tōku ingoa. Ai ahu mai rā hau i nā pai mauna o nai tūhoi o nā te awa. Kia ora wātu.
Kia ora koutou, e mihi ana au ki ngā tangata whenua, ko Rimitake te maunga e kōrero ana tōku manawa, ko te awakarangi te awa e mahi ana o ku maharahara. No ingarangi au, i tipu ake au ki whakatiki, e nai nei noho ana au ki te haukaratu, he kaiko au, o te kura o whirinaki tōku kura, he tanga Te Tiriti aho. Tēnā koutou, ko Molly Evanet tōku ingoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora, me karakia pēr tātou i te tuatahi, e mua tonu te tuku atu i ngā whakamarama o te pōnei, me tō tātou, tō tātou tanata ronunui kai wairunui ia mau ko Māori. Me karakia rā tātou, tiria mai te aroha o te rangi, tiria mai te aroha o te whenua, kia toi tū te tiriti. Hei tua papa mo te miro mā, te miro whero me te miro pano. Waihoana, mā te ture te whakapono me te aroha, hei whakapūmau i te here tanata. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Kia ora. You being here this evening means supporting Te Reo Māori in education and standing up for Te Tiriti or Waitangi. Together we have power as educators. Toi tū Te Tiriti, toi tū Te Reo Māori. We know what is right for tamariki and mokopuna in front of us each day. As educators, we have responsibilities to meet their rights of access to Te Reo Māori, to tikanga, and to knowing Aotearoa New Zealand's histories. This evening, the panel will discuss the value of Te Ahu or Te Reo Māori programs and the 30% funding cap, the conditions needed to Te Reo Māori to thrive in education, and the Crown and Te Tiriti or Waitangi responsibilities to Te Reo Māori in the education system.
So this evening, our panel of members is joined by the infamous, the world-famous, known all over Aotearoa, Dr. Jeremy Tātere McLeod, Kai Whakahaere and Director of Kauwaka Limited, which he and his wife Terina established in 2020. The organisation is dedicated to transformation through language and culture. Kauwaka is one of the 13 providers of Te Ahu Te Reo. Tātere was born and raised in Australia. Tātere moved to Aotearoa around 17 to learn Te Reo Māori. And throughout his studies, he obtained numerous qualifications in Te Reo, and most recently a PhD in Māori. And he's a graduate of Te Panekiretanga o Te Reo. Now that is the pinnacle of Te Reo Māori in Aotearoa size. In 2010, Tātere was appointed director of the Ngāti Kahungunu Māori Language Revitalisation Strategy and has served on several boards, including Te Mātāwai and Te Taurewhiri Te Reo Māori, the Māori Language Commission. Nā mihi rā kia koe Tātere, mō nā mahi kua utaina mai rā ki runei wōpoko hiwi, hei paina mo te hiwi, hei paina mo te reo. So thank you for the work that you do. That's on your shoulders to revitalise not just Ngāti Kahungunu Te Reo, but Te Reo Māori throughout the country. And your contribution to that has been absolutely enormous. And I don't think you would ever understand how enormous that has been, Tātere. Molly.
I'll now.
Can we get Jeremy to introduce himself first, Molly? Kai koe e te ranatira.
E kui, kei te whakamākatoa i o mihi mai ki au. I koneke au e mate katoa nei te whakamā i te kaha nui o mihi mai ki au. Whakamānau no te mea, ko te nuinga o waku kai a koe, i ahu mai a koe. I ahu mai ngā kokuru o te urewera, i wai mari ai a hau. Nō reira ka nui nā mihi ki a koe, e whakateitei mai nei koe i au. Engari, ka whakateitei ana koe i au, kei te whakateitei koe i aua korauara. Tainua ki a te whare huia e takoto mai rei kauai. Tēnā koutou katoa i te whānau, ka nui aku mihi ki a koutou karanga mai nei au. manua nui mai nei koutou ki au, e tika ana kia tū tēnei hui, e rua wiki pia ki muri nei, o no tērā wiki rā nei, ko ware i au. Engari, no te mate hano o te kaumātuara, te mōreho te rua te kaumāwaru, ka mate au ki te whakakore i te hui nei. But first of all, I'm incredibly humbled, to say the least, by the illustrious introduction by Whaiari Peka, nor do I think that I warrant half of those accolades, and especially knowing that a lot of my teachers come from her tribe. So I credit a lot of the knowledge that I have around this Te Reo Māori to people from within Mātātua, from Tūhoi, but in particular the late Te Wharehuia Milroy, who I got to go and see last week when we buried Sir Bom Gillies, the last remnant of the 28 Māori Battalion, which is why I had to cancel 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Sadly, Koro Bom passed away, and I was being a bit ambitious to think that I might have been able to jump on this hui while we were at his house trying to prepare for what was a huge tangi. But thank you for having me. I have lots of thoughts, and I'll reserve that for our conversations. But once again, thank you for welcoming me. Jeremy Tātere McLeod taku ingoa, Ngāti Kahungunu taku iwi, Waimarama taku marae, and Te Reo Māori is my life. And it's nice to be with you all after realising how unfit I am walking the streets of Wellington yesterday. I've got a bit of work to do. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora. I'll now ask our member panelists to introduce themselves. Kia ora, Kate.
Kia ora tātou, ko Kate tuku ingoa. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this urupu this evening. I live and teach in Pātea in South Taranaki, and was super fortunate to be included in the pilot program for Te Ahu o Te Reo back in 2019. So really honoured to be here to speak of my experience and the value and the impact that my learning's had. Kia ora.
Do we have anyone else on the panel, Molly?
I think Anita.
Hi, we
Yeah.
do have Anita. We're just trying to get her in the room, aroha mai. So we'll just
Okay.
keep going, and she'll join in a moment.
She'll join us.
Kia ora.
Okay, Tātere, your story of learning Te Reo Māori as an adult is a very common and something many educators across Aotearoa are working on. All the while teaching tamariki mokopuna all day. Can you talk to us about what conditions, both internal and external, enabled you to learn Te Reo Māori, and how this was formed, or how this has formed your work with Ngāti Kahungunu and Kauwaka?
I feel like this story's been thrashed far too much, but I'm always reminded that this may be new to some ears in the audience tonight. And I like to think of, when I talk about my Māori language journey, that I'm paying tribute to those people that taught me, and those people who invested in me and believed in this kid from Australia 20 years ago when I started my language journey on the 16th of February. To cut a long story short, my parents were both Māori. My father grew up in Rotorua. His father was Pākehā, hence my surname McLeod. His mother was from Ngāti Rangiwewehi. She died in 1968 when he was 7. Subsequently, Dad grew up in Ford Block on Bellingham Cres and then Wrigley Road later, and that was his life. And when he was 17, he gapped it and headed to Mount Isa in Australia. My mum grew up in Hastings. Her parents were both freezing workers. My grandfather was a returned serviceman, and Mum did the same. She gapped here in 1977, and then, funnily enough, they both met on the Gold Coast, made a life for themselves, and quite happily escaped Aotearoa, their culture and their identity that they didn't know much about. They've both passed away now. My dad passed away 11 years ago, 52 years old, in an accident, and then my mum followed 5 years later. On my 32nd birthday, Mum lost her battle to cancer. So, you know, when I share this story with you, I pay tribute to my parents. But I came here 20 years ago, started learning at the Polytech here in Napier. It was actually my Te Aroha people, my kaumātua on my Te Aroha side, who visited us in 2001. If you know Sandy Walker or Arapine Walker over at Ngākura Kaupapa, that was their late father, Tuiti Waka, my grandmother's brother. He saw something in me as an odd child that was always intrigued by whakapapa, a 5-year-old, watching a VHS tape of the Te Hokinga Mai concert in 1985 or 86. That's where my passion started as a 5-year-old. The reason why I say that is that minimal exposure as a 5-year-old, simply that old VHS tape, was enough to spark something within me. And that stayed with me until I turned 17. Learning te reo, the peaks and troughs, the trials, the tribulations of trying to learn a second language, it comes with lots of hardships, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial, mental. You have to have thick skin, you have to get vulnerable. So I'm lucky I did it when I was 17. The ego hadn't fully matured by then, so I was still open to criticism and not being the smartest person in the room. But the older you get, the older the ego grows and it becomes harder to become a student. But I had some firm teachers, mainly from Ngāti Porou, and my Ngāi Tūhoe ones were incredibly regimented. And I didn't have the luxuries of learning under a program like Te Ahu or Te Reo, which was embracing. I came through a school of hard knocks of teachers who, if I made a grammatical mistake, you'd be publicly shamed and you'd never forget it or do it again. But that's my journey. I was young, 17. I feel like I'm speaking from a privileged position because I had nothing else to worry about. Lived off my measly $155 student allowance. Worked at night in a pack house. Got my course-related costs. Spent it on everything but books and textbooks, on parties and pies and sausage rolls, and that was how I got through. But studied full-time 4 years and kept studying. I'm still studying today. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, your story is very inspiring. Te Ahu o Te Reo Māori was implemented under Labour's Associate Education Minister, Calvin Davis, and 13 providers now deliver to tens of thousands of kaiako and teachers, including Kauwaka. The program is one of several Ministry of Education initiatives that contribute towards Mahi Kirona, the Crown's cross-agency strategy for Te Reo Māori. The 3 goals to achieve by 2040 are that 85% of New Zealanders or more value Te Reo Māori as a key part of their national identity. 1 million New Zealanders or more have the ability to talk about things in basic Te Reo Māori, and 150,000 plus Māori over 15 years will use Te Reo Māori as much as English. I'm going to ask each member to explain why Te Ahu attracted them and what it has meant for their practice. What has been the impact of you learning Te Reo Māori in your kura, centre or school? Kia ora, Kate, do you want to go?
Hi, kia ora. So, yeah, really interesting to hear the previous speaker talking about his journey with Te Reo, and it reminded me, I grew up on the west coast of the South Island, and there was very few signs of Te Ao Māori around me down there. All my whānau lived up here in Taranaki, and we moved home in 1984. And I was just fascinated by Māori culture. And when I got to high school, I was really lucky to be at what was Hawara High School, and there had been a marae built there in 1974, Kimihia Te Rangamarie. And I was super keen, even though I was like in the back row of kapahaka and still rolled my R's from living in the South Island. I decided to sign in to become a Te Reo learner, and my parents wouldn't sign the form for me. They couldn't see the worth of me learning Te Reo Māori, and I was only 12. And I remember being really strategic in my thinking even back then. And I made up this story about wanting to become a broadcaster and work for radio or something, and said that part of the kind of entry for those courses was to know how to pronounce Aotearoa's name places correctly. And they signed the form. And I met one of my very first teachers there, Miri Pirikahu. I don't know if any of you guys know her, Auntie Miri.
Yes.
And she took me under her wing, and I guess, yeah, I came from a really Pākehā background, and the kind of warmth and aroha and acceptance that I found just by trying my hardest. I wasn't very good, but I was kind of introduced, I guess, to that first feeling of this beautiful manaakitanga that I hadn't known anywhere before. And then, yeah, I spent some time kind of cruising around and ended up at Palmerston North College of Education, where I had Henare Green for Māori education. And again, I was welcomed onto Te Haunui, the marae there. And I couldn't understand why all the other teaching students would go to the cafe and buy a cup of coffee. I think they were about $2.50 or something for a flash cappuccino back then. We're talking 1995. And there was a wharekai at the marae on campus where everyone was welcome, and there was not only tea and coffee but also boil up and fried bread, and I just thought everyone was nuts going to the cafe, and I sort of hung around at the marae as much as possible, which was quite a lot. And then my teaching journey took me around Auckland. I taught over on Aotea. I spent many of my formative years teaching at Avondale Intermediate, so I had 85% Pacifica students, and then came home to Taranaki and got a job in Pātea. And it just made sense to me when I was first alerted to Te Ahu or Te Reo Māori to sign in. And I remember the form, I had to say whether or not my principal supported my application, and I just signed, yeah, of course he will. I hadn't talked with him. And he did support it, but he was a bit annoyed that I had, forged this document. And the reasons, I guess, that I was attracted to it was because I'd gone from working with 85% Pacifica to 85% Māori. I live in a community that's the majority of mana whenua, and I was beginning to practice some of those, the Russell Bishop teaching to the northeast type things that said relationship was everything. Māori achievement is a complex and sort of interwoven with social justice for me, but I knew that fronting up and doing my best to continue my journey with receiving the gift of Te Reo was going to be a really imperative part of building connections, not only with my students, but also with the wider whānau and other staff. And it was an amazing experience to be a part of that first pilot cohort here in Taranaki. We had Ruakiri Hons involved, Noho Marae, and it's really hard to articulate the impact on my practice, but I think it helped me to gain the trust of my students because they saw that I was making an effort to walk the talk. And for me, it was more than just putting up pretty kōwhaiwhai patterns on my board. I needed to be able to pronounce their names correctly. I needed to be able to understand as much as I could. I was invited to poroporo aki, and being able to understand and grasp a little bit of the kōrero that happens in those spaces has meant that I feel a sense of belonging to this community that I don't think I would have had without that experience. Got notes here talking about just the barriers in education around institutional racism and social justice. And I think, when you walk the path towards gaining some knowledge in Te Reo Māori, you also start to think a little bit wider. And for me, the academic stuff, the head stuff that I got through Māori education papers at uni spoke to one part of me, but the Te Reo speaks to my heart, and I think it's received as well through the heart. And so that's the kind of connection that I want to have with my learners. Now I need some water.
Oh, kia ora, Kate. Yeah, definitely. I really connected with what you said about the names and name places. That's definitely how I got involved with the Māori language at first, being a little tamariki with not knowing how to pronounce kapu. So that was awesome. Yeah. See, Anita, you've joined us. Do you want to introduce yourself? Kia ora, e hoa.
Tēnā koutou i te whānau. I te taha tōku pāpā ko te aitanga hauti, i te taha tōku māma ko ngā titiata. Ko ni te taku ingo e mahi ana au kei Henderson North School. Kei roto I te karahi rua o rua. Ko te tau rima me te ono e nohoana rātou. My name is Anita Nin. I currently work at Henderson North School. On my father's side, he's from Te Aitanga Hauti. He was a huge influence for me for Te Reo Māori because he taught me whakapapa. He couldn't speak any Te Reo Māori. Well, he thought he could, but that wasn't really Māori. And he gave it a good go, and everyone thought he was real flash when he did it. But now that I know that wasn't really coherent Te Reo Māori, but there were some really good phrases in there. And on my mother's side, Ngā Tiriti, she was a worker. And so I spent most of my time learning about Te Ao Māori and Te Reo Māori in the kitchen and learning about cooking food in a particular way and the particular processes and how we set our forks and knives in Waikato. And so from there, through our primary school, it wasn't okay to be speaking any Te Reo Māori. Might have been a little bit before 1995. Who's counting? It's not. And so we didn't speak any Te Reo Māori. Our kapahaka group would only do tu tera mai, and we would be in white skivvies with bright blue skirts. It was just dramatically traumatizing now that I look at the pictures. But at the time, I thought it was nice. I thought it was fun. But I knew we only did tu tera mai. There was no other song that we were allowed to sing. And so progressing to intermediate and high school, it wasn't cool to speak Te Reo Māori. And because I wanted to be cool, I didn't speak any Māori at all. I went everywhere but Te Ao Māori, except I couldn't escape Te Ao Māori because anything went on, my father and mother would put us in the car and we'd have to go back to the marae. And so I guess, you know, some people say streetwise, we were marae-wise. You knew that the first kai that you ate, you take the longest time ever because you're never going to get to sit down for the next 4 days. So there were lots of things like those experiences that I look back on, which I didn't like at the time when I was a teenager, but I look back on now and I understand that's probably the foundation of where I get whakawhanaungatanga and manaki from and tautoko, those type of values. So moving way ahead to many years from that time, and I had 5 children by then, and then I decided I should probably get onto this Te Reo Māori journey. So I had this really clever idea. I needed to do it quickly and I didn't have much time, so I decided to do a degree totally immersed in Te Reo Māori, hoping that they would teach me Te Reo as we went. Lucky for me, they didn't do any of that. It was all on academic Te Reo Māori, and I had to go learn it at another class whilst I completed that teaching degree in Te Reo Māori. So I did. I just did it because I had made a decision, you're going to learn Te Reo Māori, so just get on with it. And so I went to every kura reo I could possibly go to, some more than once, that they knew my name when I walked in the door, but that was okay. And in many of those situations, people would pick on me because they knew I was a teacher and they were upset that I was teaching Te Reo Māori when I could hardly do any of it myself. But in my head, I'm here to learn Māori, doesn't matter what, bring it on. And so I continued that journey for many years, and I managed to complete every free course that was ever available. And then I tried to apply for it again, and they didn't let me in. And so I was at the bitter end by the time Te Ahu o Te Reo came. When Te Ahu o Te Reo came, there was no other classes I could do except for masters, because I'd finished all the Te Reo Māori degrees anybody could hand out. I had done them. Shouldn't have, but I did it that way. And it's not, sorry. Don't do that, guys. It's not a good idea, but it was, you know, it was an idea. So I did Te Ahu o Te Reo because I looked at the people that were running the courses. They're linguists that I have met. Well, when I say met, they're like way over there, and I'm like the 500th person at the back waving the flag, like that meme where that lady's calling out to her auntie, telling her to look at me. I've got the black and red and white flag in the crowd. I'm waving it now, and there's a whole crowd of black and white flags. I was that guy. I was like way at the back, but I would focus on what they were doing. Jeremy Tātere, he's one of them. I would listen to his ability to explain things that were just too complex for me to understand in such a simplistic manner that I'd be like, oh, right, great. Ah, that's easier. because they have such a wealth of knowledge, they don't even know it too. They just impart it. And you're like, oh, so that's why he keeps doing that. Oh, I thought it was because of that. No, ka pai. And you just get gems and you have to mold them yourself. So in Te Ahu o Te Reo, it was an environment that was created so we could kōrero Te Reo Māori at the level that I'm at, and also in many cases, it actually pulled me to and stretched me to a area where I had to ask for clarity and understanding. And when you've been studying it so long, you're like, oh, shame, you still don't know that. But I didn't care because I was there to learn Te Reo. So I asked a silly question. And it was quite funny that most of them didn't burst out laughing because, I was thinking, oh, that sounds so silly, but who cares? I don't have any clue what it means. So I would ask those type of questions often to get clarity and understanding in many of our hui. Then the next thing that happens is they provide you with a software that's called Mumu Reo. And so that's time when I can practice on my own and make heaps of mistakes, and it's okay. No one's really watching me at all. No one's watching me at all. And learn as I'm going. And so through Mumu Reo, I was able to create a stronger foundation in areas that I wasn't strong enough in my belief. After Mumu Reo, which is something that you do throughout the whole year, you do a 3-day wānanga. And in that wānanga, you get to be with people at the same level as you, a little bit higher, then way higher than you, and you are immersed in the language completely. And it's a safe and supportive feeling because we're all teachers. You can tell when it's report time because we're all red-eyed teachers and we're running around going flat tack trying to do as many things as we can. But the best part is we know that we're all teachers. And so when someone's having a problem, it's easy to say, hey, just take a breath, or this is how you do it. It's okay. Who cares? You made a mistake. We force our kids into that all the time. And places that they're not used to. And so that was a great opportunity. So you have the one-on-one, you have the small class, the Mumu Reo, then you have the the total immersion wānanga. That whole program around you supports you to learn Te Reo Māori. So relating back to your question, what does that mean for them in practice? You'll need the whole holistic picture. You need the ability to practice in small groups, the ability to kōrero often, and also you need some place where you can go where you can just get those basics down. And then last but not least, you need to be totally immersed in the reo. And who cares if you make mistakes? The best part is you get to listen. If you do nothing else and you just listen for words that you know, that's a good beginning. And hearing those speakers that can fluently speak in Te Reo Māori will uplift you to be able to go to the next level. And you don't know when you get to the next level, but then just one day you're like, oh, I can totally do that. That's not as hard as I thought. And so for me, Te Ahu o Te Reo gave me that backbone that I needed to be able to secure my Te Reo Māori journey in a place where I know I can see what level I'm at, actually literally like assessment, see what level I'm at and where I need to go next. And what are some of the issues I have, and then where to look for the resources to be able to strengthen my journey as far as Te Reo Māori is concerned. So that was
Kia ora. Thank you for that. My auntie Rose Stewart married Josh Stewart from Manutiki, used to say, a little bit of reo is better than none at all, and then grow from there. Now, she was a native, both her and her husband were native speakers, so they didn't know what it was like not to have te reo. Anyway, Tātere, I want to ask you a question. Can you just talk to us about Te Ahu o Te Reo program that you and Tirina developed, and how you've seen that has benefited kaiako in their communities? And I wanted just to add the third question onto that. So it's Te Ahu o Te Reo and yours and Tirina's program, how you've seen it benefit kaiako and their communities in your town. But I want to add on also, Tātere, how you think, or what you also believe it means to teach in Te Reo, and how we maintain this mana I roto I Te Reo as teachers.
I was so excited when Kelvin Davis announced this program, at the prospect of 40,000 of the education workforce going through a program over 3.5 years. Am I surprised that the government's thrown it in the trash can? Not at all. Do I think it's a travesty? Of course. Do I think they have pitiful excuses? Definitely. Am I still trying to probably not challenge the decision, but ask them what they're going to do instead? Yes. But I think for me, Te Ahu o Te Reo, we tailored the program here in Hawke's Bay. We were a bit different to other providers. There were some providers that were heavy on acquisition, whereas we tried to focus on an attitudinal shift, because I believe that Māori language revitalization, people forget that it's about people. It's not just about acquiring a language. You can't just go and acquire Te Reo Māori, because with it comes all these other things, tikanga, customs, principles, and everything. And so we tried to make ours around attitudinal shift. How do we build how do we build an army of supporters here in the education workforce? We were only able to churn through 1,750 over 3.5 years. We always met our numbers. We were oversubscribed, and we had a model where schools came on board. They actually closed and they came in their kahui ako clusters. And I see in the name list, some of our OGs are actually on this. If Ngahina Transom is still here, she's one of them, one of our greatest advocates. For me, Te Ahu o Te Reo was an opportunity to teach people the core principles of language revitalization. Not everyone aspires to be a grammarian. Not everyone aspires to be a fluent speaker. I remember when I started playing piano before level 4 lockdown, I wanted to be Liberace overnight. And then I read this document that said that you had to practice for an hour every day for 7 years just to become a novice player. And when I look at Te Reo, a lot of us are time poor. We don't have the time to go and become incredibly fluent speakers. Anyway, to cut a long story short, what we tried to do is focus on attitudinal shift, make people feel welcome, make people understand how the mana of our children's names, pronouncing them properly, it speaks volumes. Making people understand that language activism comes in all shapes and sizes. It's simply someone who dares to challenge the status quo. And also, how do we prepare an army of allies? Because I knew that the pendulum would swing. I didn't think it would swing right across like Tarzan in the jungle like it did October last year. Who would have envisaged that? But I knew that it would be brutal. And I had hoped that we had created such a critical mass here of supporters that those people wouldn't be sucked up that big Dyson propaganda machine coming from the right. And that's what we tried to do. As I said to you, I'm not surprised that it's gone, but I am disappointed. But I understand. Yeah, I mean, I've laid lots of challenges to the minister about it, and I think that they were pitiful excuses, to be honest. But it's such a great program. It was a program that was free. We had principals on board. We had full kahui ako coming. We had people having transformational light bulb moments. Yeah, I mean, they didn't acquire as much there as we had hoped, but they came out as supporters, and they were willing to fight the good fight. I hope we can maintain that momentum and not too many people fall victim to the rubbish messaging. I hope I answered your question, Fire. It feels like a bit of a State of the Nation address.
No, you absolutely did, particularly around building what you believe was right for Ngāti Kahungunu, an attitudinal shift, because attitudes stay longer than anything else. If you change this teacher's attitude towards anything, then you're most often able for that to be embedded. And so that's, it's not just about acquiring a language, but having the whole, maybe like Anita said, the whole bit, which is Te Reo, the attitude to live in a culturally appropriate space for Te Reo Māori to grow and live in, and kind of sink from here to here, really. So no, thanks. You did answer that particular question. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, ngā mihi. Kate, You wrote directly to the Education Minister, Erica Stanford, regarding this funding cut. One of the reasons she gave was incompletion rates. You talked about this in your letter. We know it's not simple, and in fact, some providers have 96% pass rates and higher. Can you briefly talk about the challenges teachers face while trying to increase their knowledge of Te Reo Māori through programs such as Te Ahu, and what do you think would really help?
Sure. I guess the thing that I hear the most often is, it's already been mentioned tonight, is that teachers are incredibly time poor. Like, I think this is one of the only careers that you could work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and still find that you've left things unfinished that you'd like to do. But in saying that, I think that when there's a whole kahui ako committed to the kaupapa, you create space for it and you make it a priority. And yeah, I'm active across quite a few different areas of our union, and I've been a member of Greenpeace for quite a few years, so I'm an environmental activist. But one of the things that I think the union has done really well is identified the challenges in our classrooms and how ill-resourced we are to meet those challenges. And I think that when you really care about your students and you want the best for them, we're working really, really hard at the moment with little support in general. So yeah, the idea that it wasn't a successful program or that the pass rate was low, I invited Erica, who I haven't heard back from. I don't even know whether she got the email actually. But yeah, in the email, I sort of said that I thought she should listen to people at the chalk face about what the challenges were in the classroom, and that it was likely to be that there wasn't enough support for high need students, that we didn't have enough learning support, that our class numbers were too big. And then, yeah, personally, I feel like it's time that education stopped being a political football. It feels like we get to terms with a whole new way of doing things, and then we have a change of government, and at the moment our curriculum's changing. It's a curriculum that we are all really proud of. We put all this effort into professional development around developing local histories. We forge relationships with mana whenua. We start those things happening. They take time, and then suddenly we get a change of government and all of that mahi just feels like it's pushed to the back. So it feels really disheartening to pour energy into kaupapa when you're not sure how long it's going to be standing. But one thing that I'm sure will remain in Aotearoa is that the revitalisation of Te Reo Māori will remain a priority, especially for those of us in education that really care about equality and raising achievement, not just for our Māori students, but for all the students that we encounter in our classes. And this program is a massive part of increasing engagement and achievement. And also, I think it's time that we had some really big conversations about what success actually is. What does it mean? Who gets to decide? Who gets to define it? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, needing to make it a priority. I mean, whoever was at the hikoi yesterday, I mean, there was 100,000 people there that's making Te Reo Māori a priority, and completely agree. It's hard to find that time as kaiako. I'm in my first year teaching and I'm so tired all the time, but trying to make Te Reo Māori a priority is definitely up there. Anita, from what you have learned on Te Ahu and elsewhere, and your amazing knowledge that you've gathered out through your Te Reo Māori journey, do you have any tips for educators can be doing right now to advance in Te Reo Māori and therefore give life to Te Reo Waitangi in education?
Ka pai. Probably tuatahi, you're always going to be busy. So plan Te Reo Māori in your plan. Go do it in the holidays, get it ready. I plan our whole Te Reo Māori journey at the beginning of the year, and and I hand it out to the whole school at the beginning of the year. So we're good to go. You know the dates. You all need to do maurako on this day. You all need to do the waiata. You can do it whānau. You do it for maths. You do it for reading. Let's go. Term planning. You have a maths group, a literacy group, a health group, have a Te Reo Māori group. Make that a normal plan, normalise it. Tuarua. In the morning, when we all do either our maths board welcome to school, do a welcome pai. So you have a kai whakapiripiri, you have a kai kōrero, you have a kai waiata that you are practicing, and a kai karakia to whakamutu. So just having those brings our kids from kia ora to being able to understand the parts of a pōwhiri, because they're doing it every single day. Take 7 to 10 minutes on your first week. First 4 weeks, it'll take between 15 to 20 minutes, just like it will take for you to set up your books. So make it a real life thing. Make it a real thing. 20 minutes at the beginning of the year. Now in term 4, I sit down, say the word pai, everyone jumps up, tells everyone to be quiet, and off they go. That won't happen if you don't start it at the beginning of the year and you normalize it. So I guess there was just one word: plan. It's part of this country. Just get on with it.
That's amazing. If you don't plan for it, you're not going to get it done. Hey, Anita.
That's the plan.
It just gets put to the
plan
side and put to
is
the
the
side.
plan.
That's right. So plan to normalise it. Hey, Tātere, there is a lot of whakaaro around about around who should learn te reo, who should teach it, and who should be prioritised. And the reality is that most of our tamariki Māori are in English medium schools, and most of their kaiako are non-Māori. So what would it mean if all kaiako could speak and teach in te reo Māori? And how do we ensure that it stays with Māori where non-Māori are a larger population?
My language mentor, Sir Timoti Karetu, if you haven't heard him speak, then you haven't experienced life. He's brash, he's unapologetically
Yes.
provocative. But one of his
Yes.
challenges that he's always said to Māori is that there's lots of non-Māori that are learning te reo, and there's lots of non-Māori that are committed to learning te reo and are passionate about te reo. And he's always about giving the language to those who are committed. You know, he was never into these initiatives that were out there to entice the masses. He was always about, if you wanted the language, you'd do it. Doesn't matter where you're from. Then we should embrace it. And I understand, even within the Te Ahu providers, there was a varying spectrum of opinions about pepeha, who should do pepeha, what's the role of Pākehā in this language regenesis. But if we are true to what we want, if we want this language to survive and we want 1 million New Zealanders using the language by 2040, then we have to embrace Pākehā. We have to embrace non-Māori. I tried not to fall in the trap of pepeha and who does it and that sort of stuff. I just wanted people that were passionate, and that's what we had. We had teachers that were wanted to be there. We had boards, we had kaitiaki, we had parents, we had principals, but we had people that were willing to fight for te reo. So to me, creed doesn't matter. If we're talking about the mauri of the reo, well, then that should be something for our people to do. And as I said, I'm always speaking from this place of privilege. I understand there's lots of barriers for a lot of our people, and so it's easy for me to throw this out there. But for me, all of those Pākehā that came on the program were amazing. They tried their hardest. It was incredibly uncomfortable for them and our Māori people as well. I think it was the Māori that found Te Ahu more uncomfortable than our Pākehā. It was so confronting for them because they had the shame of they should have known. So we tried our best to make it. Actually, if there's anything I regret in our Te Ahu program, I'll tell you all, we probably tried harder to be accommodating for non-Māori than our own people. And it was my own aunties that suffered in silence in the back of the classroom. So if I have one regret, and I'm humble enough to share it with you all, it was probably that. We didn't focus on our own people and how uncomfortable they were. Karaboi mena kua hoki au tō pātai e whai, hoi anō.
No, kei te pai. I'm aware that your biggest critics will be the aunties, and they will cut you down with just your eyes, with just their eyes, the way they look at you. So, I mean, I kind of get that. Timoti Karetu was one of those, you know, if he didn't think you could cuss the mustard, he would say so, teacher or no teacher. He would tell you, kore rawa au, e tukuna te waku mokopuna, me he mea he mokopuna waku. Kore rawa au, e tukuna te rā waku mokopuna ki a koe. Said that
But-
to many a teacher that in my presence.
I think you raise a good point, though. Majority of our children are in mainstream education, so you know we were completely open to invest in that. Yes, we had our critics in the beginning. We had our critics from our Māori meeting. Boy, did we have our critics about the amount of money that was thrown at Te Ahu and all of this. But hey, we did it, and I hope it's memorialized. And I hear, I was listening to Kate, what you shared. Who measures what success is? You know, so yeah, kia ora koutou.
Hey, thank you for that. Molly, we're gonna skip down now, Molly, to the bit that's really why we've come here tonight.
Hi,
Well,
kia
apart
ora.
from hearing all you wonderful people. So Molly, thank you for coming, everybody for coming. But there are how many things, Molly? 4 or 5? 4 things that we need to get over the line so that
Hi.
you leave here knowing these 5 things. So go, take it away, Molly.
Oh, am I going first? Oh, okay. Things are moving fast, so we need to prepare ourselves. The bill has passed its first reading, and submissions are now open until January the 7th. We need to send a strong, united message that there is a mass opposition to the Treaty Principles Bill, and to let the government know why Te Tiriti is so important to education and what it means for our practice as educators. So we need to... yep.
Carry on, Molly.
Are you sure?
Yes, carry on, Molly. I'll do 3, 4. You carry on.
Okay, okay, sorry. So sign up with the link in the chat that will be popped up in there soon to receive support with your submission and to hear about our upcoming NZEI Te Reo webinars and actions.
And to keep up to date with all these things, join our NZEI Facebook page, Toitu Te Tiriti, and that's going to go up in the link in the chat box very soon for you to have a look at and join. All of this information and more is on our NZEI Toitu Te Tiriti campaign page, along with Toitu Te Tiriti teas that you can order. Now, I brought my whole staff, 15 staff, a Toitu Te Tiriti t-shirt, and they wore them. Not all of them could go down to the march. I happily went to the march yesterday, but they wore them, and then they made Toitu Te Tiriti shirts for their children. David Seymour would be absolutely devastated if he knew that my school was Toitu Tiritiing all of our children yesterday. But anyway, so you can have a look at that. That's also going to be put up in the chat. And of course, the first of these actions in our monthly organising hui are happening next week on the 27th of November at 7:30. So you can sign up to that as well, the NZEI Action Group. Want to do the last one, Molly?
Finally, if you would like to become a member of NZEI Te Reo, there's also a link in the chat. And all of these links will be sent out to attendees in a follow-up email.
Yep, thank you. And can I just say, Anita, Kate, and especially you, Tātere, it's a privilege to be in your presence and hear you talk about the things that you've been absolutely passionate about, along with Kate and with Anita. I'm not sure whether you've been a school teacher, Tātere, but you'd go really well alongside these 2 ladies. They are wonderful educators. That is in, them under Te Ahu o Te Reo alongside you as well. Thank you for your time on this webinar, you 2. And I'm just having a look at our time. So you've got all that info. Maybe one of you has a question, or a member has a question that they'd like to ask for either Tātere, Anita, or Kate. Can I throw that out there? This is not on the script, by the way, but seeing as how we've got a couple of minutes, let's just see if anyone out there has got a question for these 3. I mean, I've got one for Tātere. If you're thinking blue skies, Tātere, what are the conditions for Te Reo Māori to thrive and reach all tamariki Māori in particular, and what part can educators play in that? Blue skies thinking.
First of all, teachers, I am hardly au fait with the pressures you face daily. I was always blown away when teachers would come to our programs in school holidays. 3 days of your school holidays you'd give to Te Ahu o Te Reo. So first of all, my thank you
Wow.
to you all, your strong messages of unity. You can appreciate how overwhelming this is because we're fighting so many fires and so many battles, no matter where you turn. But for me, I think it's about an education workforce that strives to do better, strives to pronounce our kids' names right, accepts the mana of those names, strives to incorporate te reo where they can, values te reo, because if you think back to me as a 5-year-old in North Brisbane growing up with that minimal exposure from an old VHS tape, no, it was Beta, that's how old I am, it was Betamax. That tiny little bit for that 5-year-old was enough to ignite something within me. And here I am, 38 now. And so I just want to say that the impact that you have, the influence that you have, thank you for caring. Thank you for fighting this, because it's going to be hideous and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I do have a hope that we'll get back to blue skies and smooth sailing, and the pendulum might just swing back. So from my heart to you all, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can't see any more questions in there, and that I might not be on the right page, but I can't see any more
I
questions.
can't see any partai either.
Is our chat monitor about? It's okay.
Yes,
So thank you anyway.
Oh, he whātai tātu, I've got a whātai for you, Tātere. I'm just thinking about, you know, for tamariki mokupuna who might be picking up on the anti-Māori, te Tiriti rhetoric that they're hearing around. What can we kind of arm them up with a bit against what they're hearing about who they are?
Good question. And I want to respond to that as a parent who's noticed that my own children are starting to pick up my own prejudices. And I actually do self-reflection as a parent all the time. And I think to myself, do I really want to impart all of this hara that I carry into my kids? I was at Parliament yesterday and I was standing there right in front of when David Seymour and his mates from ACT came out to do a quick live on their social media. And I won't tell you what I said. It's hardly something that I'm proud of. But, you know, then my 10-year-old yells at you, pussy. And I thought, oh, my goodness me, when my 10-year-old's saying these things, I really need to watch what I'm saying because they're hearing and observing. But perhaps it's the positive slant and we educate them and we remind them that things will get better. And I have to keep telling my kids, give them hope. I don't want to impart my own prejudices on them, even though it's so hard. So maybe that's something. How do we make our kids know that in time, justice will prevail, truth will prevail? It's just going to take a bit of time, as well as not being accused of being wokest by Mr. Peters from the Northland. I hope that's something. That's from a parent.
Kia ora, as a teacher,
I think
I have encouraged them to hear the whole story and understand that people are entitled to their perspectives, but what's best for our future, because the future is what they will be in. What do they want to see? And so we studied the whole hikoi on the way. We heard what both parties had said, and then we studied what's best for their future, because they are the future. And so that's what I taught my kids to understand, that yes, this isn't going the way that many people are wanting it to go. But if you were in that position, is this the right way for you? And they were able to dig deep on some of the mistakes they've made and how they reacted. So linking that to their real life gave them the opportunity to understand that person isn't doing or saying the things that are best for me, but that's his perspective and he's entitled to that. What am I going to do to make sure my future is going the right way?
Hey, thank you, guys. Thank you, Tātere, especially, but all of you tonight for joining us on this webinar. This webinar has been recorded and will be shared to all the attendees, along with the links that we've mentioned and shared in the chat. So, nā mihi Anita, kia kahara koe I roto I wō mahi mua kai te muro o te ahi koe e whakaako ana. Kei kia kahatoni rā koe ki te tuki māhuna ki te māhuna o te minita o te mātaurana. Ka warawara hoki whakamuri, kia kaha rā koe te wero atu rā i te minita. Tātere, ka rekau rā he mihi i tu atu i tēnā koe hara mai nei ki te tautoko i te kaupapa, te ho mai rā e tahi paku maramatana, nā mihi rā kia koe. O tō hara mai. Thank you very much, Molly. Shall we do the karakia whakamutuna and let these good people return to their evening?
Ai,
Bye. Tūtawa mai runa, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora rawatu. Hoki pai katoa tira koe tau ki woko i tau kāina. Kia ora. Thank you, Tātere.
Kei te pai. Kia ora koutou.
ngā mihi nui mō tō kōroa, te pō mare e, ka kite.